Women are not helpless victims. They may be victimized occasionally, but that doesn't mean they're fucking helpless. And that's what pisses me off about this whole fucking thing. It's like my motivation for preaching self-love and saying the things that I did again here, I had to, sympathize with my friend's mother about everything that happened. And what, like, I want to make something positive out of the whole experience, and so I preach a message of self love, and I say that when you don't love yourself, when you hate yourself, what happens is that you tend to when your self talk is incredibly self negative, the people that tend to start showing up in your life are the people that confirm the message of your self talk rather than the people that argue with it. But now, like this is where they go. I mean, they always just drag it into, oh, we're victim blaming now, and I have to eye roll intensely and just want to bash my head into the fucking desk about all of it because it's just like, yeah, fine. If you want to distort it into that, if that's what you want to think of the message, be my fucking guest. I don't have the fucking energy to deal with this anymore. You know, so they're being blamed for their self-loathing. Well, the thing is that I don't know how you get to that. I don't know how you know being able to see that somebody hates themselves and that this played a role in their tragedy somehow means that you think that they deserved what happened to them because of the fact that they were afflicted by this particular affliction. Like, I think that she should not have I think that she shouldn't have gotten in that fucking car, but I think that Jennifer should have been more responsible and that no part of her self-loathing meant that she deserved to die. It's just, I wish very much so that she had not, but it's such a fucking like nightmare for me at this point because it's like I can't even go out there and say that I don't want to go through this shit again. And so there's a reason why I'm like preaching a message of self-love because maybe not in every tragedy's case will it literally save somebody's life, but I do think that in a world in which Kara had not internalized all the fucking garbage the community had shared about her, that if she had been more like me, she probably wouldn't have gotten in the car, because the moment that Jennifer stole from her, she would have just removed her from her circumstances. you know and this is what gets me is that they'll tell you that you're victim blaming if you're doing anything that implies that the victim could have done anything to defend herself, and it's like, Jennifer, now if her like abuser had happened to be a man who had a gun and would kill her if she tried to get out of the situation, I would see your point, and would not put literally any of the blame on her. But you, you know, not every not every case either of something having gone wrong, is ultimately a case of a man with a big machine gun, or a gun at all, indeed, that is potentially lethal, holding it to her head and, threatening to kill her if she tries to get out of the situation. I don't blame the victims of domestic abuse at the hands of men. And I don't blame them for not getting out, because I know that when they do, those guys feel they've got nothing left to lose. I do also know that these sorts of men, they also have a very strong tendency to have a Jekyll and Hyde type personality, which is very kind up front, and then they ease the abuse in slowly. I mean, the guys that have come to the conclusion that women don't that nice guys finish last have kind of come to the wrong conclusion about everything in that whole thing. But I mean, first of all, niceness can often just mean like agreeableness. Like, not raising a fuss, never rocking the boat, and that's a problem because if you don't ever write, like, how are you truly being, kind to somebody if you, like, for instance, if somebody's bullying them, you never stick up for them, like, nice can often be just so agreeable that it doesn't actually do anything in a situation that calls for the heroics, of actually putting your neck on the line to stand up for somebody that's being, bullied by somebody else. I know this. I mean, I know that there's a distinction between niceness and kindness that I've been taught. I listen enough to women who will articulate that position to understand now, the difference between the two concepts and the way that they wanted me to understand it. If somebody's picking on somebody else, like, the kind thing to do is to, defend them from their bully. The nice thing to do is to just do nothing about it and look the other way. That's basically the difference. So, if I were to use vernacular, I would try to be a kind guy, not a nice guy, to say the least. But my frustration, with Kara, everything that happened and the tragedy, just like, Jennifer did not have literal weapon to hold to her head. It wasn't one of those types of situations, and it was one of those in which, the victim very much so could have. She wasn't helpless to work to excise her abuser from her life. Jennifer's her fellow woman. She's not really that much of a threat to her. If she doesn't want to be friends with her, she'll just go elsewhere. Like, and it would have been fine. But, I guess Jennifer used her car as a way to weasel her way into Kara's life, the same vehicle that she totaled and lost when she drove off that bridge into that lake, like, and got my friend killed. It's just that, in a feminist group, all you are really apparently allowed to say is that, oh, yeah, let's foist all the responsibility on Jennifer and, you know, pretend and blind ourselves to the broader reality and, act like, it's problematic to even imply that Kara could have done anything to remove Jennifer from her life, Like, why? Because to conclude that Kara couldn't have done anything would be a really antithetical, like a message that is really antithetical to feminism, anyways. Like, women are helpless. That's a really strong feminist message. They're helpless victims. Like, do you see the problem? That's not a very feminist message. Like, women are disempowered, helpless victims. Like, you want me to act like they are? I don't understand. Like, where's the feminism in that? you know, Kara she could have if she had wanted to. You know, and like I said in my former videos about this particular tragedy, it was just such a fucking, like, man, like, those guys that were like, oh, you're a terrible person because you happen to smoke to enjoy weed. It's such, like, small petty bullshit and such a judgmental, sort of absolutist mentality that, acts like, a woman that engages in that sort of thing is gonna, like, and that pot's a gateway drug. You have to believe all the phony lies about marijuana too to be that way about somebody smoking pot, like, and then, Kara, just took what was clearly bullshit to heart, and then, was like, well, if like, such a victim mentality there too, which was just, if I'm not popular, maybe this is why. Maybe I'm a terrible person because I don't have the external validation that I want. Like, I'm not. It's not like everybody's flocking to me. I'm just this alternative to, other people. Like, Kara was such an amazing friend to have in your world at all. I mean, I can sometimes get sort of depressed and mopey, and I've got this friend that doesn't mind being part of my life at all. And she kind of gets you out of your head, every time that we hang out. And she would run up and down the stairs, jumping on them, off the balconies, and we like to scream at our neighbors and look at their stunned reactions and their confused looks at us, and we found it comedic and fun to engage in that behavior and just sort of goof off. That was my friend, you know? And I don't know how you can be so rambunctious, and not be able to do anything about the fact that there's this girl that's stealing from you. She she was my friend, and I had I had to face what was pretty much up until that point my worst nightmare. When we had to bury her, and now that she's passed, it's like the only thing that I wanted to do as a result of this was just to say that I think that self-loathing played a major role in the tragedy, and that she lost her battle with it. And it sucks because this tragedy could have been prevented had she not internalized the narrative that her community had pushed on her. If she had been able to face down criticism the way that I can and decide that the bastards are wrong, you know, I've been underestimated and they're wrong. It's not like that. That's how I feel. I've got a bunch of people that don't like me. Well, fuck them. I'll proceed to live my life in a way that in the end they'll see that they were wrong. I will succeed in life. Now I'm hell driven. And Kara, looking back at the past and everything that happened, though, it's like I can't even fucking tell the truth about things because some woman will screech in the comments, this is victim blaming. I can't stand it anymore. I mean, I've got another video that I could link in this hotbar, but I wanted to quote, the person who actually wrote it, the self loving is a motherfucker video. Yeah, the girl who wrote it, she literally confirms exactly what I said. She agrees with what I said. She says, and I quote, like I'm not quoting directly, but she says more or less not that when you've got that negative self talk, when you're talking like shit, you're saying negative things about your life and yourself, you tend to magnetize the people that say the same thing about you. They start to show up in your life, and you start to keep them in your world. You don't push them away, you pull them closer because they're confirming what you already think about yourself, rather than saying, no, you're amazing, and I know that you think that you're awful and that you find this inconceivable, but the world needs more people like you in it. You run away from those kinds of messages. When somebody like has that sort of like emotion about you and you hate yourself. And the reason why I say all these things too is like, as well, like myself, I've never really had much luck with self-loathing women. Like it's always been a sort of, if I do like them, I end up liking them, but they don't like me back. And I now know why. you know they hate themselves and I don't. So that causes issues. They start thinking there's something wrong with me as a result, and so they don't feel the chemistry, they don't feel the spark. Like that's what happens. And if I say that, and I point these things out, if I say this at all, everyone's getting, oh, that's blaming the victim. Well, fine, I just blame the victim. I'm not sorry. I mean, shit, man. I mean, what else am I supposed to fucking do? I mean, like the only thing that I can say is that in my friend's case, you know what I think and what I've noticed is that I don't have those that negative self talk. I don't tear myself apart that way. There are things about myself of which I am critical, but there's not like that much. And I know that overall I've done a lot of really heroic and good deeds and everything, and that I deserve better than what I've been getting from people. I know it. Like, I've done good things for people to such an extent that I don't deserve the things that people are, the pushback and the ways that people are treating me. Like, I don't think that at all. I find the internet antics and the way that people act online to be really deplorable, though. But yeah, Kara, I mean, she could have excised Jennifer from her life, and she should have when, she caught her stealing from her. I would have. I love myself, so I have authority to say that people that love themselves don't put up with that shit. Because I'm an example of somebody that won't put up with it. If and the conclusion is that if Kara had cut Jennifer out of her life, then when Jennifer, came over that night, when she died, she would not have gotten in the car. In fact, Jennifer wouldn't have even come to her place in the first place because her act of stealing would have cost her the friendship at that point. That's where it should have ended. And it didn't. And it didn't because some people suggested that she was a bad influence. And when she caught her, she had learned that she wasn't much. And she had decided that, this kind of abuse is something that she should just endure. Kara sometimes complained that people were so selfish and everything. She did, but she didn't actually work in such a way to shield herself from much of anything and just, became something of a doormat. And when there were people that really adored her and really liked her and found her quite fun to be around, like, we kind of got pushed to the outer edges as orbiters in her existence. And so it was like, you've got all these dudes that very much so love you, and they very rarely ever get a chance to hang out with you, and the guys that you do hang around are the ones that do shit. Like, I mean, I got I got messaged more than a few times about the man in question having done things like just decided to pull over on the side of the road and ditch her there, or just leave her there and let her find her own way home, and Kara having to perform basically a miracle of finding somebody else to get her to come get her, and pick her up. She had, and I mean, the people that got to see her like the most up front were often all the worst. Like, all the people that walk all over people, that take advantage of doormats, that never give much back and are just take 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 take, those are the people that she kept, not at an arm's length. It's the ones that she held closest to her. She held the worst of them, nearby her, and pushed the ones that were more giving away. And because of that, because of that reality, it's like, like, these girls, these women in these groups are like, oh, you're victim blaming. And it's like, what am I supposed to, how am I supposed to look at it, miss? Like, I've got a friend that's now dead, and from the way that everything looks, from all appearances, and from all the evidence that I have, and from her mother's testimony, and from what I witnessed, and from her behavior, and from my knowledge of what her existence was like, my knowledge of the social situation and all the people that were her friends and who orbited around her existence and her world. I don't know everything about it. I can't. I'm my own person. I can't pierce that entirely, but I knew enough, and I saw enough of the dynamic that was happening to realize, and it wasn't just that. I mean, up from what it looks like on Facebook too, she had friends up in New York that really missed the hell out of her and really found her to be quite a bit of fun, and adored her. And those guys are also sort of on the outer edges, and they remember her very fondly. But this whole set of circumstances, I mean, what am I supposed to think? Like, they're saying it's victim blaming, but it's like, what else am I supposed to conclude? you know Perhaps if Kara had been more self-confident, she would have had the wherewithal to push to do what should have been done and push Jennifer out so that she never got in that car in the first place. I mean, and I'm a monster for saying that she didn't deserve to die because she didn't do those things, but these are things that she could have and should have done. And that's why I say that 1%, of the responsibility basically falls on her. It's not a lot, but you know you're not, because and on the grounds that women are not entirely helpless, and because of the fact that her abuser was another woman, and because of the fact that that woman didn't have an armed weapon that she held to her head. you know it's kind of absurd to say that she was literally helpless in this situation. She was victimized ultimately, but she empowered her abuser to do it. And that abuser shouldn't have taken advantage of things, but she did.